They've been called visionaries, trailblazers, feminists, and Canadian heroes, and they're immortalized here on Parliament Hill. Known as the Famous Five, Emily Murphy, Henrietta Muir Edwards, Irene Parlby, Louise McKinney, and Nellie Mcclung changed the Canadian political landscape forever. All five women lived during a time with several discriminatory laws in place. This motivated them to take action. They all passionately believed women should be present at all stages of the legislative process. The majority of Canadian women were allowed to vote for the first time in the 1921 election. They could also run for office. But women were unable to enter the Senate. In 1927, the five women asked the Supreme Court of Canada, does the word person of the BNA Act include female persons? After 5 weeks of debate, the Supreme Court decided that the word person did not include women. The five women were shocked by the decision, but were determined. They convinced the Government of Canada to appeal to the Privy Council in England, Canada's highest court of the time. On October 18, 1929, Lord Sankey, the Chancellor of the Privy Council, announced the decision. He stated that the exclusion of women from all public offices is a relic of days more barbarous than ours. And to those who would ask why the word person should include females, the obvious answer is, why should it not? It was a historic moment. The Famous Five achieved the right for women to serve in the Senate. They also paved the way for women to participate in other aspects of public life. But what fueled these women into action, and who were they? Emily Murphy led the challenge. Born in Cookstown, Ontario, she was exposed to politics at a very early age. Having grown up in a family full of politicians and lawyers, there's no question that politics ran through her blood. After moving to Alberta, she began working to protect the rights of women and children in rural areas. She spearheaded campaigns for women's property rights. Her work often brought her before the courts, which was unusual for women at the time. In 1916, she was appointed as the first female magistrate in the British Empire. During this time, a lawyer continually challenged her rulings, claiming that she was not legally a person. Henrietta Muir Edwards became involved in women's causes at an early age. She joined several religious organizations, discovering firsthand the marginalized traditional role of women. In 1875, Henrietta founded the Working Girls Association, later known as the YWCA. Soon after, she launched Working Woman of Canada, the first Canadian magazine for working women. After moving to Saskatchewan, Henrietta discovered her true passion for women's rights. It was there that she became further involved in feminist organizations. She helped establish the National Council of Women and wrote several books on the legal status of women. Louise McKinney grew up in Ottawa. She went on to become a teacher in Ontario and North Dakota, and eventually moved to Claresholm, Alberta. It was here in Claresholm that Louise founded a local chapter of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She played a leading role in giving Alberta women the right to vote in 1916, and was the first woman sworn into the Alberta legislature, the first woman in any legislature in the British Empire. As an MLA, she worked to initiate social measures for immigrants and widows. The eldest child of a British Army colonel, Irene Parlby was born in England. Her father's profession meant she moved around a lot, having lived in both India and Ireland during her childhood. Irene came to Canada in 1897, settling in Ailix, Alberta. She quickly became an advocate for rural women and children. In 1921, she was elected to the Alberta legislature, becoming the first female cabinet minister in Alberta, and the second one in the British Empire. Later, she was selected to represent Canada at the League of Nations in Geneva. Nellie Mcclung, the last of the Famous Five, was born in Chatsworth, Ontario. Soon after, she moved to Manitoba, where she would see her start as a social activist. As a novelist, a legislator, and suffragette, her influence was felt across the prairies. Nellie Mcclung has been considered one of the most important leaders of Canada's feminist movement. She helped Manitoba women win the right to vote in 1914 and was instrumental in the majority of Canadian women winning the right to vote in 1918. 5 months after the Persons case was delivered, a woman was appointed to the Senate. She was not one of the famous five. On February 15, 1930, Kareem Wilson entered the upper chamber for the first time. She was known for her dedication, intelligence, and deep compassion. Although her appointment was applauded across Canada, many in the West questioned why Emily Murphy had not been chosen. Despite their pivotal role in obtaining the right of women to sit in the Canadian Senate, none of the famous five were appointed to the upper chamber. More than 80 years later, the famous five continue to inspire Canadians. They're remembered as five fearless women who've dedicated themselves to improving everyday life for Canadian women.